Welcome back to Just a Digital. We talk about today's video games and the classics that inspire them. I'm Brett Clark.
And I'm Matt Keaton. Today, guys, we're going to talk about cost of gaming. Gaming, like most hobbies, takes a level of dedication and cost. Today, we not only touch on the financial side, but also the social side of being a gamer.
Plus, during the Save Point, we read your comments and your questions and give you insight into the world of the collegiate esport athlete here on Just a Digital. Plus, we were joined with Ridley, as you guys can see on the podcast today. He's in a very needy mood, so bear with us on that. He wouldn't leave me alone, so I got to record this with a cat all over the desk. But anyways, Matt, as far as like talking about the cost of gaming, I think a lot of people, the first question that always comes into mind is how much do you like spend on it? Like, how much does it cost you in particular?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that over the years I've spent a lot of money on games, but I would never say that it's like a bad thing. I think any hobby is expensive if you love it enough or if you want to invest into it enough. And I think there's level of dedication and level of effort that people put into collecting games and spending money on games. And I think we've seen with like the PS5 and stuff like that, people are willing to spend astronomical amounts to game on the newest hardware, you know?
Absolutely.
But as far as you are concerned, like I know that you like to trade in quite a bit and stuff like that. So what is gaming cost to you, like monetarily? Like what are your big expenses and stuff like that?
So it depends. My big expenses can range from like DLC add-on content for games, depending on if I'm gonna buy them after I buy the disc. For me, keeping the cost down is, like you said, trading with GameStop and just being able to facilitate the trades and get store credit, flip it for the cost of titles. I usually spend about half the price or less on most games. It was a point in time back a few years ago where I paid nothing for video games.
Mhm.
But something I've learned throughout that, keeping the costs down is not always that easy. So you have to kind of pick and choose your battles, so to speak. You have to pick and choose what's most important to you. And for me, keeping the cost down is not only trading, but making those tough decisions, those tough calls, those games you got to have and you got to put a priority on over other games. And, you know, the gaming industry hits us that way sometimes. And they're like Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, Tomb Raider, I think, and one more title I'm missing probably. But those annual titles that all come out at the same time really hit our wallets pretty hard.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah. I think one of the things that I try to avoid is, like you said, those annual releases, like the Maddens and the NHL. I kind of have a thing in my mind where it's like, for me, it's the number. So like 17 is my favorite number, is my hockey number. So I had to get NHL 17. And then after that, I saw NHL 18 on a sale. So I got an NHL 18 with a buddy of mine. And I didn't bother getting NHL 19 or 20. Actually, I think I did get 20 somehow. Like I think someone just gave it to me as a gift. But I didn't set out to buy it. And then I got 21 because the roster, you know. So for me, I really don't set out to get those annual releases, but sometimes I end up getting them anyways just because the deal's too good, or you know, you just get it as a gift. And so that's one of the things that I try to avoid is as much as I can is spending money on stuff like that. And Maddens, I stopped buying Madden probably back in 11 was when I stopped buying Madden games.
Good choice.
And it's just one of those things where I don't look back and really regret it, because I mean I'm really not playing those games to the full value of it.
Yeah.
And he's eating my mouse here. Ridley, what is your problem today? He is all over.
Just a big love sponge.
Yeah, he saw the popularity he got in the last podcast like video, so now he's like, I'm gonna be in all your podcast videos. I mean, he's adorable. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
But I digress. One of the things I also try to avoid is I'm a sucker for the steelbooks. I don't know about you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what's really nice is that they're starting to sell the steelbooks separately. So if you bought the game and like it's in the clearance bin, like sometimes you'll find the steelbook for like $5, which I like a lot. I prefer to do that when the game's not so good, but the artwork's really nice, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's something about that steelbook, that tin, that just that feeling of like the special case, and you can, you know, drop test it, and it's almost indestructible. Some of them fall apart pretty easily, but there's nothing like going into a GameStop or a Best Buy and seeing a game that was highly touted and it's now much more reduced price, and all of a sudden It's like an ancient one in the back of the store that got forgotten, and it's a steelbook.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you can get some pretty good deals in GameStop. Certain locations will have used copies with the steelbooks. Somebody just said, "I don't want this game, get rid of it." And that's how pretty much I've come across a lot of my steelbooks as well. When I don't buy the big release steelbooks, I'll sometimes find one that I like, a game that I had a second opinion on, and I decided to get it after like Christmas, like the noob sale, and I'll find a steelbook around somewhere. And interesting enough, like every year, a part of how you keep the cost down is Ubisoft. Don't buy the Assassin's Creed titles right away, because Best Buy, I guarantee you, a month down the road or less, literally the same week of launch week, the game was like 75% off on Steelbook. The whole special $130 edition was like literally 75% off at GameStop, because there was one copy they just couldn't sell and it sat on the shelf forever. Yeah. So I know that that's one thing too that happens. If you just wait, sometimes exercise that patience, as he's getting a butt scratch.
I'm not scratching his butt. It's the thighs, man. It's all about the thighs. But yeah, I know I agree with you. Sometimes waiting on the games, especially like NHL. Like we both bought NHL 21 this year. It was super cheap. It was half off. And it only been out for a month. That's sometimes you gotta look at when the game released and how close it was to the holiday season, because sometimes that'll determine how much of a game goes on sale. Like Call of Duty and all of them go on sale by like $10, but a sports title you could see anywhere from $20 to $30 if you're lucky, and that's the case that we saw for NHL 21 this year. Also, NHL is kind of, I hate to say it, but they're kind of hemorrhaging money, so any excuse to get their titles out the door is more than enough for them to drop the price by $30. But other than the actual games themselves, what do you find you're spending the most money on? Because it's definitely not hardware. I feel like hardware used to be kind of the center point of like, oh, it's a $500 console. Oh, it's a $1,500 computer. But then at the end of the day, if you really think about it, like you're spending way more money on the games. But like apart from just the games and the hardware, what else do you find yourself spending money on? I find myself spending dramatically more money. I know that's really disgusting, all that cat hair, ain't it? I find myself spending more money on the merch, honestly, that associates with the game.
So yeah, that's where they get you in. I mean, the collector's editions are always something that I see so many people, friends who have podcasts themselves and who one day will give credit to, not today, but I see a lot of people who have these unboxing videos and these special collector's editions, and that's cool. That's great. I've taken it to a virtual tour of your apartment. You have lavish collector's editions all over. You got lavish statues and collectibles and all figurines and stuff. Me, what I spend more money on is when I'm not suckered into buying a special edition, I spend more money on like a peripheral, like a controller. I just recently picked up like an Xbox Microsoft controller for the PC to play Cyberpunk. And so, what I did was I got the God of War Pro, PS4 Pro, and the controller had serious mechanical drift that I took it apart, could not fix. And like literally like a year later, I traded it into GameStop for like $30.
That's crazy.
I couldn't deal with it. And so that was the benchmark of me saying, which ties into this, I'm not giving up my PlayStation 4 Pro God of War edition. So I can never sell it because it'll lose value because it doesn't have the special controller. And let me get it out of the way. It's not a special controller. It's the same DualShock 4, but it's just got a little paint skin of like the God of War symbols. And so it's not really worth the extra cost. But for me, it was heartbreaking when the controller I couldn't fix the stick drift on it, and I just replaced it. So what I did was I got the copper colored, like rose gold copper kind of controller color, and we've had some different controllers here and there. But I find myself, that's the peripheral I use more, or like the charge dock. I bought the charge dock to charge 2 wireless controllers, things like that. I spend more money on because those never really go on sale frequently enough. And I always miss the sale on the $30 or $40 controller sale. Yeah, I always miss that sale, man. So for me, it's usually full price when I have to bite the bullet. And then Strategy guides. That's one thing too that I wanted to mention. Strategy guides is where I spend the money, but only if I've had enough trading credit. Like for Cyberpunk, I went and
Mm.
got the special crap with it, and it wasn't that much money. I actually didn't spend $1 on the console version of the game, which is great because I had trade in stuff. So I got the collector's edition strategy guide for it, and that's one thing where I think it's kind of like just a novelty item.
Mm.
For me, it's I don't look at them ever, but it's for me it's a coffee table piece. I'll set it up in my living room on the coffee table, and we can use it as like a platform to put stuff on, and it's like a centerpiece to talk about it when you have company come over, or you just get bored, and instead of having a magazine you just reach forward and
Yeah.
you look at the gaming book. And to me, that's what that's about. And for me, that's probably where I waste my most money, as far as, like you say, biggest expense. These things are like $40 a pop, but they're nice to have um, in the future. And for me, I don't know if I can show you because the camera's not adjusted, but I have like God of War, Skyrim, Fallout 4, The Witcher 3, Zelda, Breath of the Wild, Destiny, and then Cyberpunk. So like I still have quite a few of the special edition collector's guides that I guess I'm just dust collecting at this point. But that's me in a nutshell, man.
Yeah, I think one of the things with like strategy guys, you can argue that they serve not only a practical use, but they also, like you said, they can serve as a centerpiece. Kind of how I view statues. Um, there's a point though where like, how many statues do you need? How many books do you need? For me, I think games by themselves are expensive, but I'm a sucker for collector's editions, especially if they have like merchandise and stuff that come with it. Like I said, I spend majority of the money on the merch. I could give two craps about the game if the game's good. If the merch is good, it might be worth it. Persona 5, for instance, I knew it was a game I was going to love. I bought the Steal Your Heart edition, which a lot of the fans of Persona look at me and go, "How did you get that?" You know, and I'm like, "Didn't you guys pre-order it and stuff like that?" They're like, "No, it wasn't even pre-orderable." I'm like, "Well, I saw it on the end cap at a Best Buy, and I just grabbed it." You know, so there's things like that where I grabbed that. I grabbed a day one edition of Final Fantasy 15 like months after it came out because it was like a clearance shelf at like a Walmart or something like that. So for me, like those collector's editions, those holographic editions, and the editions that give you something to show off than just the game experience, I kind of fall for. And that's kind of what I've been realizing lately is I'm like, do I really need that? Do I need the collector's edition? Do I need to spend $20 more for that? And the biggest thing I've noticed is like in games like Call of Duty, where it's like you can get the season pass for $20. That's kind of a no-brainer. If you're gonna play that many hours in a Call of Duty to just get the battle pass, you know, and get all that stuff ahead of time. But when it's something just like skins, I find it very easy to spend additional money on the little accessories, like, you know, because you're like, oh, I bought the game. That cost is out of my head. Immediately, right then and there, that little microtransaction, that's where I think gaming gets me the most. You know, is it's so easy to add a $10 battle pass, a $5 thing, you know, and as much as I hate microtransactions, I love them at the same time. You know, the downside is you can't resell microtransactions. You can't sell digital goods unless it's something on like the Steam store where it's like a skin from CS:GO or a skin from a certain game. So you're kind of stuck with it, which is fine. But as a collector, I don't sell my stuff to begin with, you know? So that's kind of where I think the financial cost of gaming for me hits the most, is that it's something that I throw money into. It doesn't make me a lot of money back, if any, you know? But at the same time, it's like, it is an expression of who I am, and I can physically show my collection and physically show like my statues and stuff like that. I take a lot of pride in the statues that I've collected, mainly because like the statues that I've chosen are from games that I love, and the one that I really want to acquire next is that Master Grade Nier Automata one I showed you, which is like $3,000. I'm like, I don't know if I want to spend that, but I've said for a long time that Nier Automata is probably my favorite game of the last like 5 years. So of the decade, I don't know. It's hard to say, you know, because I had a lot of stuff to deal with. Like I had Final Fantasy 13, which is so influential into my love for JRPGs. Um, but having a statue of that, is it worth the $2,000? In my mind, I don't know. Maybe. And it's tempting, but at the same time, I tell myself it's $2,000 for a statue. Like, don't get it, So there is a point where you do have to be rational with your expense, because eventually run out of display space, which is what me and Kylie run into at the apartment. I've run out of so much space. But apart from like just the financial aspect of it, I feel like there's also like almost a social element to like gaming, where like some people look at it in a weird way. And I don't know if you've ever had this issue, but did you ever like have people judge you based on the games you play, or just the fact that you were a gamer? Did you have like a sudden awakening as like an adult saying, this is who I am, I'm a gamer, versus like, as a pre-adult where you're like, I don't know if I really want to be a gamer. I like games, but I'm not really a diehard gamer, Did you ever have that experience?
Absolutely. I could take up the rest of the podcast, honestly, talking about just that topic alone. So I had some experiences. So as a kid growing up, I think society for me, so me in my age and stage now, obviously I'm in my turning point of my mid 30s. So I'm on the back end of my going into my 36. I'll just put it out there. And so years ago when I was a kid, say when I first started when I was about 8 years old, gaming world was very different, and the perception of you being a gamer, or it was more like, well, these children are addicted to video games, and to me that video game addiction was like a stigma as a gamer, and it was like, oh, well, you play video games, and it wasn't as socially acceptable as it is in today's world.
Yeah, it was very scary for parents back then.
Absolutely. Parents had to take the controllers, and that's back when you had to give it up because your parents were your everything. And your parents grounded you. I mean, just to be open about this, I got grounded, man. I didn't have a television in my room. I got everything taken out. I was sitting in a corner. Like I was full bore. I had a stepfather who was more like a military disciplinarian growing up, and so for me, when I did bad things, I got punished hardcore. No TV, no video games, no nothing. And that's before the cell phones were out and cell phones were a thing. So you imagine that, not having any kind of entertainment, not even a newspaper, man. And I was desperate for that. So to be positive of that, for me, it was growing up later on in my late teens, early 20s. People still were like, dude, you're a loser. You play video games. Like, what? Yeah. Video games got me through some of the most important things in my life that I would not have gotten through without. So for me, my perception of video games is, if you don't like people playing video games, go do your own thing. And us who appreciate them for what they are, for the greater part for me, was an escape from reality. I was like, you know what? I had an epiphany, and I think it was not until my late 20s where I'm like, I'm a gamer. I'm part of something. I'm doing something that I love to do, that I love to escape, and I'm bringing my family into it. Now, more recently, to wrap it up for me, is and through life, I've been through the difficulties. I've been through the ups and downs. I've been through the struggles and the triumphs, and being a gamer, having to cope with it, having society not really like it for what it is, and then all of a sudden now it's come full circle. But recently, I had an opportunity to spend some of the most impactful, lovable, sweet-hearted memories from my wife's mother, my mother-in-law Sharon, and her and I connected on a level. She's 75 years old when this is taking place, and she's watching me play video games, and she's not thinking of me as a child, but she's seeing what it really is and opening her eyes and just being overwhelmed with joy. And I played Witcher 3 for hundreds of hours with her by my side, watching and cheering me on and enjoying it. And I full circle transcended all of this, thinking, wow, look what video games means in 2017, 2018 when I met her. And look what it is now. It's everywhere. It's a socially acceptable thing. And it's come full circle for me and made me realize that I am thankful to be a gamer, and I am thankful for those struggles my mom had getting me my first Nintendo, and me buying my first PlayStation 2 when I was 18 years old, and the proud memories I had. And now, even being a content creator now and getting on board this train with you with podcasts, it's just been so uplifting for me, and it's really made me proud. I am 100% proud of being a gamer, of being a content creator, of doing all this fun stuff. And that's that, man. I won't let anybody tell me otherwise, or I won't let anybody tell other people otherwise. I'll always be supportive of this, because this can be something, and it shouldn't be labeled as an addiction. It shouldn't be labeled as something bad. It should be embraced, and it should be something that people just come together and respect. And I think now you see that more and more, and it's finally turned the page where, I mean, we'll look at the kids who are successful. There's 8-year-olds on YouTube that don't have to ever go to work another day in their life for the money that they make. And so that's what excites me about this, and hopefully growing and getting bigger is the potential. And that's what it means to me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, like, I kind of always knew that I was a gamer. I always really appreciated just the stories that you could have in the games, the experiences you could have, even when the graphics were awful. Like, not awful, but like, vintage. On the NES, stuff like that. Just the fact that you could have a story that was so compelling, and me being able to, read the story years later after playing it before, I was like, whoa, this is actually what the game's about. Because when I first played it, I had no idea what I was doing. I just was jumping and doing whatever. But then as you get older and you read the subtitles, there's this whole mythical world that opens up, and that's really where you start to dive into the story. And people, as I grew up, I think if you ask anybody, everyone just says that Brett was Brett. I think I could really give two craps about what people thought about me, and I was kind of blessed for that. But there's still a moment that really stuck out in middle school where I was talking with my ex-roommate across the street, John. We were talking about Call of Duty, and I didn't have Xbox Live in middle school. So he's telling me about all these maps that came out for Call of Duty, and I was just super intrigued into it, because couldn't even fathom the idea of DLC at the time. I didn't have the concept in my mind, but I had played the campaign through flawlessly. Like, I had gotten the veteran achievement for it and everything. And so we're talking about it, and this kid, I'm not gonna, I'll roast him a little bit. The kid Walker turned around, and he said, "Is all you talk about video games?" And I go, "No." I go, "What's the big deal? What's wrong with video games?" And he's like, "I don't know." He's like, I really don't get it. He's like, "There's other things to talk about." And I'm like, well, maybe that's what me and John connect on. Maybe there's nothing else that we connect on. I don't like his music necessarily as much as he likes his music, so that's not something we connect on. I'm like, "Do you play video games?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I do, but," he's like, "I don't have to talk about it all the time." And having this conversation with somebody in middle school, mind you, instead of him just calling me a straight up loser, I got to give him credit. It was a very, he was probably asking, genuinely, why it is I talk about video games so much. I point out to him, I'm like, it's just something that's universally connected. Someone's played a video game at some point in their life, whether they love them and play them every single day, or they didn't understand what they were doing, but the experience was what they remember. I think at some point in everyone's life, they played a video game, and it's just about what video game was that. And then you can connect with that person, and that kind of is what gaming has been for me. It's been a way that I can connect with people. It's something to talk about. I played hockey growing up, so no one in my school knew anything about hockey. It was really stupid. Here I am playing hockey all these years, and the only people I could talk to were my hockey team, who I saw 2 or 3 times a week, and then on the weekends. But then throughout the week, I never saw those guys. So it was like a completely different person, and that kind of was the social cost for me was that I played hockey, went home, played video games, and went to school. That was kind of my personality. It was just It was just a triad of three different three different lives, you know, because like hockey has taught me so many valuable life lessons, but they've taught me a lot of things as far as like, you know, teamwork, you know, sportsmanship, hard work, your mentality on the ice reflects who you are off the ice, sort of thing. And then video games have taught me so much as far as deeper thinking, you know. And then school taught me how those skills that I learned happen, like how they actually turn out in the real world, which I thought was really cool. Was like Final Fantasy and stuff like that really taught you about like emotions and understanding other people. And because of that, I was never an ass to anybody. And that's why like I was the guy that everyone knew but no one like hated, you know, like everyone knew who he was, but no one really hated him at all. So I was very blessed for that. And that all came from me being able to look at somebody and say, I don't understand where you come from or your situation, but I'm willing to listen and I'm willing to learn, because I know for a fact that I didn't like Saz in Final Fantasy 13 because I thought he was just bitching and moaning the whole time. But in reality, he was really hurt because his kid's gone, you know? So I had to kind of relate that to people, where I was like, I don't understand this person. I don't know their backstory, so I can't judge them, you know? And that's gone completely out the window nowadays. Now I judge everybody slightly. No, I think I might jokingly like say something, like I might jokingly judge a little bit, but it's like, you know, I never hold that against the person, you know. I don't have prejudice really, because at the end of the day, if I was to be in someone else's shoes and they're judging me based on who I was or how I looked, that'd be wrong. So I can't ever do that to someone else. And that's what Final Fantasy taught me. You know, Final Fantasy taught me that skill socially. And now when you tell people that and you write a paper about it in 8th grade about how Final Fantasy was amazing, and people look at you like, what the hell are you talking about, kid? And I'm like, see, this is exactly what I'm talking about, guys. Like, fallacy, l'Cie, like the mythos of Final Fantasy 13. If you understood it, it's pretty decent. It's kind of weird, but it taught me a lot of valuable life lessons as far as like herd mentality and stuff like that, and how people so blindly follow social norms, you know. And it's just something where like video games can touch so much on social issues and not really tell you that they're talking about social issues. It's weird, and that's kind of why I chose this topic, was because for me socially it didn't really cost me anything, but what I gained from it was a mindset that I think I don't see terribly many other people have. It's come to the point where I look at people and I kind of see, like, I don't think I'm not saying that I think I'm better than them, but I can kind of see like where their thought process is, and I can kind of like tell, oh, this is why they're this way, you know. And it's not me judging them. It's just more of like I can see how certain actions lead to something else. It's very similar to a story arc, you know, and I kind of compare people to books in that way, you know. And that mentality of things all come from video games, you know. It's just, you see so many examples in games, and you play so many games, and after a while you realize that the writing is either really bad and you don't keep that in mind, or you realize the writing's really good because it's real, you know. Long story short, I mean, it just really helped me understand people on a psychological level, I think, along with like other skills. But like I can get back into that. I can talk forever about it. I don't know. It really helped me out a lot, I think, is what I'm trying to say, you know. Because I think you can talk about people being addicted to it, and I'll admit it, I'm probably addicted to video games, you know, pretty easily. But how can you take something like I'm gonna say Naruto, for instance. Naruto is a story that's about ninjas and they fight each other and people bleed and they go and they stab each other and do like jutsus and stuff. In reality, this is something it's gonna blow people's mind if you're a Naruto fan. Naruto is actually about Shintoism versus Buddhism. 100%. Really? If you look at it. So you've got like Shinto, the traditional way of Japan, you know, going against Buddhism, which is a new culture that's coming in. It's about forgiveness and all that and yada yada. Don't want to get too much into religion. But if you look at Naruto, you can see how it's about Japan as a nation. It's not about like ninjas and all that. There's aspects that pull from both the way Japan was before World War II and then after World War II. And the battle between Shinto and Buddhism is simply a way to show how Japan has changed and how the nation itself has to adapt more or less to a new way of life. And that is something that at the surface level you don't see, and that's why I love video games. They teach you so many things, and they show you so much in just all these hidden contexts. It's crazy. I could go so much more into that, but I don't want to like blow people's minds too much and get too.
No, it's okay, man. I mean, that's what we're here for, to share with everybody our experiences. One honorable mention I want to mention, and I probably haven't said it on the podcast before, and I want to give a couple of these guys shout outs because they were tremendous friends growing up, and I would have never been in the place I am today without their friendship and the guidance. And so growing up in Milwaukee, it was really tough for me because being a new kid to the area, moving from California. And around my 7th or 8th birthday, I met another Matt Fabish. And he was like my best friend growing up all the way through school, all the way to high school, through high school, and then after. And then he enlisted in the Army, and he went and served our country. And another good friend along the way that we picked up and became friends with was Bo Hayes. And dude, he was they both were two of the closest friends I've ever had in life. And video games brought us together. First it was sports, so we used to play baseball sun up to sundown, man. And twilight through the summer we would play nonstop all day, all night. And then when it got dark, we'd go inside and play video games. We had sleepovers at each other's houses, and people were kind of like weird, like these 3 boys hanging out all the time. We had a minor league player, Tommy Gessner, down the street who we used to play baseball with, and he would help train with us and stuff and kind of like let us play triple play baseball. And it's probably something I haven't shared with you, so I figured why not just bring it out on the podcast and share. But yeah, I was very tall and slender and athletic at one point. I don't know where that went to, but we're working on that now. But I used to love playing baseball as a kid, and Matt and Bo were there for me like night and day. We used to play video games 24/7. We'd stay up till way too late, man. We would sometimes get into trouble and skip school and just play video games and do some fun stuff, man. We had a blast. But video games for me brought us together at a time when my mom's health wasn't good, and it brought me and my friends together, and we just bonded over it. And I think I took it to be more of a crutch than they did. Matt went off and hung out with a different crowd and went to, hung out with the school guys and the football team and stuff like that. And Bo made it his own life with his girlfriend and had a kid and stuff. So we all drifted apart. But for my childhood growing up into my late teens, I had 2 of the best friends that you could ever ask for. And video games brought us together, introduced us to something other than just sports, and gave us another social niche, a social gathering objective to do something to do constructively, where we weren't out roaming the streets getting into trouble. We weren't in the bars, underage drinking, stuff like that. We were just doing real life stuff, but in a setting where we were in someone's house playing video games, and we were safe. And that's how my mom liked it. My mom considered them like my brothers, her sons. And so we had a great time. But long story short, into that, that's what gaming did for me also, was like enamored friends and built relationships. And without those, I never would have been able to function in a society growing up without that close-knit group of friends who we just enjoyed playing sports. And when we couldn't go out and play, it was raining, or we found every excuse to play Madden. I mean, we were playing NASCAR at one point. We were that desperate just to play video games. And like the Matrix series came out on PlayStation, and we love that. So stuff like that. Just sports games, all sorts of types of fighting games and stuff. Just typical guy games, kid games. But we just love doing it, and that's to me where the culture of hanging out with other gamers really blossomed. And for me, I think I just took it beyond that. I made it my life in a way, and I've never looked back since. It's been a part of my life ever since my childhood, and it's been here and ever prevalent. So, and it has taught me, like you, it has taught me many valuable life lessons, both from the stories, the games, and the financial decisions as well, of having to forego certain games because you don't have the money, and that's sometimes is when it hurts the most. But ultimately, to be positive about the whole thing, that's when life teaches you the best experiences, is when you don't have anything or you have less than you had before.
Oh, yeah.
And you really do learn to appreciate that. And that, for me, that's my share to you and to our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. I mean, you said, like, especially when you can't afford stuff. I remember living with Nathan, not being able to afford much at all, you know, and I lived in the basement of this house, and it was like just no central heating. The computer was literally the thing that kept me warm. It was less money to run my computer than run a space heater, you know. So I just always had my computer on in my room, and I was playing games on it because, you know, why not? Because that's the whole point of the computer. But that's really where I got lost in The Witcher, you know, and it was a game that I was maybe 3 years late to it, but it was still amazing. And I'm playing that game, the free PlayStation game of the month, which was, I think, Walking Dead Season 2, I think it was.
Okay.
Really good game, by the way. And I played that game one sitting from like 8 p.m. to like 8 in the morning, you know. But the reason is because I literally could not do anything. I couldn't go out. I couldn't afford it. I barely had enough gas to get it to work, you know. And really, that experience alone really shaped who I am today. You know, I told myself I'd never be in a situation where I'm like that again, where I'm eating dollar store Spam and Taco Bell hot sauce to get by in the week, to put money in the car so I can go to work. I think a lot of people don't really ever hear that because it's not necessarily, it's a story I like to tell, but people don't really realize the context of why I do it. And once a year I'll eat dollar store Spam with a little bit of Taco Bell hot sauce, mild, by the way, just to remember, you know, just to have the taste in my mouth. So it's like, you don't ever get, like, you know, what's the word? Complacent, you know? Yeah. So that's personally another thing that indirectly video games taught me was, you know, they're always there for you, you know, even when there's nothing else to do, you know. People are there for you. People come and go, you know, but your favorite stories, you know, your life lessons that you learn from games, they don't go away. They're always with you, you know. But with that, before we get into topic 3, I think it's time for a save point, Matt.
Save point.
So on this week's Save Point, ladies and gentlemen, we were going to tell you guys about some comments that you guys had left on our YouTube videos for Cyberpunk. But according to Matt, YouTube nuked them, right? That's what you were telling me?
Yes. Yeah, so I have a strong feeling it's because, so the Cyberpunk videos, the nudity filter was not selected. And so that is main contributor is to the fact that it got nuked. Yep. So I want to give a shout out to Robert for saying, "Hey, buddy."
Yeah. He probably said that when the boobs came out. Hey, buddy.
It wasn't intentional, and it definitely wasn't something that was planned. It was just an oversight. I went through extra steps to make sure the copyrighted music wasn't playing. Don't know what, but stay tuned. We will have more content coming in the future. I will wrangle some more content together for Cyberpunk, and I got a backlog of games, man. It's getting crazy.
Yeah. I feel you on that. Yeah, so Matt's going to be working on that. And that was pretty much, unfortunately, all the comments that we were going to have were on those videos. And when I was going to pull them today to put them into the script, I was like, where are the videos? And then Matt called me today as I was coming home from work and told me that the videos were kaput. So I was like, well, that kind of puts a damper on things. But yeah, we appreciate those people reaching out to us on the YouTube. There is a video, however, you can always comment on, and that's this one on YouTube at the Digital YouTube channel. And that way, there's no boobs or nothing on this video. So don't have to worry about that. You can also leave us a comment on our social media handles with the hashtag #DisToDigital. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, etc. It doesn't really matter where you follow us. But if you want to, you can always reach out to us on Facebook. We have conversations there as much as we can. Or you can join our Discord where we talk every single day and I post funny memes about League of Legends. Even though I don't play League of Legends. It was a funny video. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the save point. Nothing too exciting, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen. YouTube, had to strike us with a copyright or a nudity filter or whatever. I don't know. I blame Matt on that one. I had no hand.
Well, we haven't heard anything officially, so I have no idea. But we'll either get it back up or we'll just create new content. Either way, we do really appreciate you guys for viewing. It was actually the first intro video was our highest viewed video on YouTube, and as we're just starting, it's very vital to us and important to us that we get this out there, that we get some support, and that's what we're trying to do. And we thank you guys for supporting us on that. Really
exactly. That. Thank you so much, guys. And getting off to closing here, Matt. Closing up here, Matt. Wow. I was wrong. Maybe this video will get flagged.
That's staying in totally.
yeah. We're this video might get flagged for that innuendo apparently.
No.
Is the cost worth it? And I said before, my mentality of judging is not the right word. My way to analyze, I think analyzing is better than judging. I think judging is predetermining somebody without having any idea. Whereas what I do is I like to get to know somebody, So it is kind of an analysis. But the way that I analyze people has come from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of JRPG characters that have very similar traits. I relate people to this character, and what role do they play, in that game? What was their purpose? What was their backstory? What was their reasoning? And not everybody is a JRPG character, but let's take myself, for instance. If you ever played Persona, Yosuke, kind of loud, eccentric, center of attention. I can kind of see that. And I'll admit it, I'll admit that I'm a Yosuke. But by me knowing that I'm a Yosuke, I can eliminate the annoying parts of it, I can eliminate the annoying parts of Yosuke and prevent myself from being that way. Or if I associate a friend with, a different character, and I don't really say this person's a character, I say that they have similarities in my mind. And when you start to see so many social traits be replicated, you can avoid bad ones. I think I'm a pretty good judge of character, and I think that's something where people who play the bro games like Madden and Call of Duty, they don't get to see that side of video games. Where JRPGs, I say JRPGs, any RPG, any story-based video game teaches you a lot about relationships, characters. If it's a good game, it teaches you about development, as a person. And I think that that's something where that life lesson alone, or that mentality that I've adapted, I think for me is worth it. I mean, it sounds very, very weird to describe. It's very hard to explain it. It sounds really messed up when I'm saying it out loud. But if you really think about it, you meet a cast of 50 people in a video game. That's 50 people you've met, kind of, in your mind. That's more social. That's a more social exposure to 50 people. Now they're made up. They're made up. They've all got their character flaws. But the fact is that these are people that you love, you hate, you get bonded to, and you attach to. Mm-hmm. If the game is good, and the more and more you have social exposure in that regard, and you relate that to real life, not every single person in the world's going to love you like in a video game. It's not The Sims, But the thing is that you can relate that to real life, and things will eventually overlap, It's so hard to explain. It's not a one-to-one comparison to real life, but there is, if you have so much exposure on one, and you have so much exposure on the other, eventually they'll start to overlap. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain when you're a social gamer to other people who aren't gamers. It's so hard. I don't know. What do you got to say?
Well, it teaches you. So basically, where you're coming from, I'm in the same thought process there. Gaming, it is, to me, the cost is worth it, and it definitely is worth it if you do branch out. So I was a bruh gamer,
Yeah.
the bruh Madden,
Yep.
Call of Duty, Mortal Kombat, all that stuff, man. I ate it all up. It was Mortal Kombat, Madden, triple play baseball. That was my religion,
Mm-hmm.
like Holy Trinity, whatever. Not to go that way because I don't. But and then all of a sudden, I discovered RPGs and games that made you think, made you second guess, taught you about life, taught you about morals, about humbling you if you have a big head, knock you down a peg, and make you think and make you realize it's not all about you. Sometimes the self-sacrifice is necessary for someone else to thrive. And that taught me a lot of valuable lessons because I was a selfish teenager and I wanted to have everything, but not in the way of flaunting. I wanted more friends. I wanted to have everything. And I was partly the center of attention when it came to the video games and the friends hanging out. And in high school, I was one of the most popular guys in the building. And that's not bragging. That's just how it was because that was my personality growing up. And all that wasn't worth it. What was actually worth it to me was video games, friends, and playing a multitude of games where you could just like get lost in. And it's hard when you have a group of friends and you have people watching you, unless you have a significant other who's like into watching you and being your companion. It's hard. So you have to play the Mortal Kombat, the party games. You know, you can even sit down and play a little board Monopoly, or board games. Though that's fun too. I love doing that too. We got to find a way to have a virtual board game somehow on the podcast or something.
I already got that partnership in the works. Air Council, not a partner, not a sponsor, but I've already got it in the works.
So yeah, but yeah, it teaches you so much about life and who your true friends are at the same time, because through life you need to learn those lessons, and schools don't teach you that unless you have a melting pot and a strong clique of friends. And I think video games helps you transcend all of that, and it helps you kind of grow as a person. And you know, you're not always going to make the right decisions. Video games teaches you everything you need to know about life in a way. Sometimes that parents lack, or the opportunities that they had lack to teach you things. And that's where the right game will come along and just like blaze a trail. It's like an epiphany. All of a sudden, oh, you know, maybe I should be this way. And I think it gets a bad rap also in society too, because it's like, well, video games melt kids' brains and they all they think about is video games. But if you think about it, and I'm not a parent, but maybe one day if I'm lucky to be a parent, or for those parents out there, I think you would agree, it's better to have your kid at home doing something constructive. And I know personally, some of my wife's family, we were having the holiday dinner and they were mentioning how that their kids they thought it was a bad thing at first for video games, and then they gave them the Fortnite and the Xbox and all the stuff that they didn't know was possible, and the kids now play Fortnite, they play Forza, stuff like that, and they play games, and the parents are now seeing the benefit of kids' social interaction with these games, and not online, just with each other and coming together as friends. And they're starting to see the true benefit of games keeps them occupied, but it also helps them fine-tune their motor skills as well.
Yeah.
And I know it did for me. And that's one skill I picked up, hand-eye coordination and attention to detail, and sort of my personality that you guys don't get to see, which is I'm more of a detective in a way in my thought process in the world, both in my job and in the real world. It's you have to kind of so sometimes people just have to be that way. I'm one of those people. So I learned a lot of that through gaming, on looking not only outside the box but looking at things from a different perspective, and then gaining a better understanding of what you haven't maybe thought of. Exactly. That's what video games have taught for me, and that's a skill I picked up.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, like you say, like people don't really get to see it on the podcast. I think people who don't know us personally, or people who don't necessarily know us on the deepest of levels, our personality that we reflect on the podcast, for better or worse, is who we are. But there's stuff that doesn't always make it to like, the podcast topic. Like, in this particular situation, like with the skills that we talk about, it's more of like a social thing that we talk about, or a mental thing that you gain from video games. But one of the things that I really gained from it was something that I really just liked because it was something I could do with my dad. My dad played Civilization, which is like a turn-based strategy game, and I could have given two hoots about it. At the time, I was really into history growing up, and I really didn't understand the game. But the fact is, the matter was that my dad was playing this game, so it must be fun, And my dad would explain what's going on, and he'd explain how, if you have your city on water, you have advantages because of this, and he would start telling me aspects of real world social studies, in a video game. And then eventually that went off to be Deja Vu for the NES, which is a detective game where you try to remember all the stuff that happened to you because your guy got amnesia, and then you turn into a vegetable if you don't get the medicine in time. And your dad tells you that you turn into a vegetable in real life. You turn into a carrot if you get too sick, and freaks you out for years. But there's things where, for me, that was something that I gained, was, having something to do, and that cost alone, or that was worth it. That was worth it in the long run, because I do play Civilization, now. Very, very on and off, but I do appreciate Civilization. Eve, what I've been talking about, it's all economics. At the end of the day, you mine product, you mine ore, you sell it, supply and demand, and then you can make it into certain materials. You can then build certain ships and sell it on the market for more, or you can try to take out some other place by lowballing them, so that way your products are bought, but they have to bring down their prices, and then you just end up starving their corporation. It's all economics at the end of the day with games like that, and I think that's another skill that people really don't look into. Is there are games that at a strategic level, have mechanics in them where you're rewarded with intelligence, like real-time strategy games are kind of an example of that, but you also need to be able to execute it with high mechanical skill. Like StarCraft, for instance, high mechanical skill, high in-game sense. But a game like Civilization, where if you know, it's the year whatever, I'm supposed to get a tech boom in this year historically, so I shouldn't focus on building steam power because I'm going to get it anyways, So there's things like that where you can know a skill, or you can know something, and it correlates into a video game. It's stuff like that. Surgeon Simulator is not exactly the most real of things, but I know of video games that are very point and click, and it walks you through 3D diagrams of the human body. So there's things like that where I think video games, quote unquote, is a very broad term. It's not just Call of Duty. I don't think Call of Duty has taught me anything other than to hate society, because the guy camping in the corner is not a normal human being. He's just sadistic. He's got problems that he doesn't want to admit, or the guy in hardcore who runs around hip firing a shotgun. That guy he just must lack such fine motor skills that he can't aim down his sight, So I think it's worth it at the end of the day, and you and I both agree there. But I think that there's something, apart from being just the social aspect, I think they allow you to have entertainment in almost any field. If you like sports, if you like math, if you like Spanish, you can play a game called Jumpstart. Oh my gosh, someone just fell through the ceiling, I swear. There's a game called Jumpstart Second Grade, which teaches you Spanish and about your pantalones. There's things like that. I think there's a video game for everybody, and at the end of the day, I think there's the cost of gaming, apart from financially, you're not sacrificing much,
Right.
I think the social cost that used to be there is no longer there, which is nice. I think society's just getting more accepting of different lifestyles, I mean, if you look over in Asia, it's ridiculous how popular video games are. But I think there are still issues in the gaming community, and we can talk about that in a later podcast. The issues in the gaming community, but I think as far as the cost of gaming, I don't really see any negatives to it other than your pocket. What about you?
Yeah, that's perfect wrap on that story for me. I don't really see a downside to it other than your wallet, or maybe your spare time that you maybe wanted to do something else and you got carried away. Um, I've never really had an instance where I've come away from playing a video game and gone, "Oh, you know what? Man, that was such a waste of time.
Yeah.
I really wish I could have that time back." I mean, unless you're talking about like a game called Alpha Protocol, which was, do you remember that bad boy? Yeah, that was probably single-handedly my worst video game experience ever because of the hype train and me being so excited for it. But yeah, as Brett slides off there for a second. Oh yeah, no, it's yeah, it's always the cat. For me, it's been well worth it. It's been a hobby that's paid dividends. And before we wrap here, if you want to talk about friendships forged, like I mentioned earlier, you and our friendship was forged originally kind of by us both working at Best Buy, you working for Samsung, and me working for Best Buy in various parts. You know, I did merchandising. I did asset protection, and I became SWAT before I left Wisconsin. And so, for those of you who don't know what SWAT is, it's inventory auditing, boring, counting stuff, not fun. But yeah, you and I forged a bond over like work, and then we've forged it through video games, and we've managed to rekindle and reconnect our just magic of playing online games together and having fun. And some of the darkest days, honestly, is when I lost connection with you and all of our friends on Overwatch, and I had the life to focus on, and you know, I got married and things just went forward, and I kind of had to take a step back from the fun of the video games, late night sessions, and just change things around. And being able to reconnect with you and jumpstart this and do this with you now, this is episode 19, it's been incredible. And for me, I think that we owe our friendship and what we're doing now and what we're paying tribute to every day is video games and our forged friendship through that. And I'm thankful for it.
Yeah.
And
I'm 100% thankful for it too. And especially you bring up Overwatch. Unfortunately, I won't get to touch too much on it because it's very late in the episode here. I was gonna talk about my esports experience in college. I was on scholarship to play Overwatch as a support main, and it was $3,500 a semester, so cost almost of 2 classes, which at the time I was doing 4, and the cost of having a scholarship for video games is there are esports classes. So you have an esports like 101, an esports 201, and you play 40 hours a week for that class for credit. And then if you do well, they give you stipends and stuff like that, additional to like what your scholarship actually is, depending on your placement. Plus they give you equipment and stuff like that, depending on what you need and how well you guys do and what sponsorships you guys can get. But Overwatch was a very tough time for me because there was for once in my life, I wasn't playing video games for fun. I was playing it for something competitive. I was playing for money, for school, and what ended up happening was, especially playing with you guys, I was able to find fun in video games again, and it really was something where after I got academically suspended because I spent so much time practicing, that now I'm like, what's the point of playing video games if I can't make money off of it, to play at that level, and then I get on PlayStation, pop in Overwatch, and there's everyone online, so that social net really saved me, especially going through a tough time as far as academically, like esports wise, and just socially. Like, it was a really tough time, and having that friend group on Overwatch really was worth it in the long run. I would rather have that happen, than be a professional esports player. you know. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people who go out to be esports player or play collegiately don't realize is you're not guaranteed to make it as a pro. You know, professional players are the top 1% of players. You know, if you're top 15%, you can play collegiately, but you won't go pro. You know, that's the thing. You know, and I think at the end of the day, the cost of gaming there is your sanity. You know, like if you really want it, you really want it. But then there's got to be a point where you got to call and be like, there's no way I'm going to make it professionally. I mean, even with how much time I've spent developing on certain skills, I still lack fundamentals in certain areas that I wish I didn't, but just I can't focus on the fundamentals. I don't have the time to learn better tracking. You know, I have a pretty good flick shot, I have pretty good target acquisition, and I've got really good recoil compensation, but tracking's where I struggle. So, you know, that those milliseconds where I could track a guy instead of rapid snapping to him, like, could be the difference between winning or losing. You know, it's really, at the end of the day, is how much time you want to spend. Do you want to spend 6 hours relearning that a day for a whole week just so you can get slightly better at it, and then months down the road you're good enough at it that you can start implementing it into like live games when you go against like another UW school against another top 500 player? Like, the cost was my sanity playing collegiately, I'll say that, plus my academics. So in that regard, playing professional or playing collegiately is not worth it. I'll say that. Playing video games for fun is worth it, you know, to touch up at the very end. But I think that's all I have time for. I don't know about you, Matt. Do you have anything else to say?
Oh, no, that's good, man. I appreciate you sharing that. That really gives us some insight as to what you went through. Yeah. Something you really didn't talk about much with me personally on the side is just us being two gamers having fun.
Yeah, I mean,
and I the only thing I really knew is it was a frustration for you.
Yep.
Because your work-life balance, school balance, everything was out of whack, and you really lost the fun. I could tell, and it hurt me too. Not that you hurt me, but like it hurt. I felt bad for you because I could tell like it was stressing you out and just becoming so like absorbing.
Yeah.
That it was kind of killing it for you. But yeah, I'm glad to be back gaming with you and picking up the pieces in Call of Duty as you mow them down and just having some fun, playing some wacky games. That's what it's all about, man.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, just having fun, just, you know, getting together. So
I agree. It's all about fun at the end of the day, and just it's a good way to stay in touch with your friends. You know, the cost of gaming really is just your wallet. Nothing too past that. You know, I mean, some people will say like gamers are antisocial, but I think if anything, it keeps you more social. It keeps you social with friends that are long distance, and you know, you meet friends that you potentially would have never met, like Aaron. You know, great friend of ours. I met him on PlayStation playing Rainbow Six Siege. So I think in that regard, I think the cost of gaming is not that much. Sorry, cat's attacking. The cost of gaming isn't that much. You know, it's whether or not you can afford it. And the thing is that at the end of the day, it's as cheap as you make it. You know, you don't have to buy a new game every single year. You can wait till they're in the clearance bin and experience the same story that I experienced years later, you know, or vice versa. I'm experiencing Final Fantasy VII for the first time last year, you know, and you're experiencing it for the first time this year. You know, there's a lot of things like that where sometimes down the road, the experience is still the same, you know, but it's just how much did you pay for that experience up front? I don't know what the cat's got to do. We got to close this up. The cat's going to destroy the apartment and blow something up. But anyways, folks, that's all the time we have. I got to take care of this cat before he blows up the TV over there. You can see him off in the distance. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us here on today's episode of Disc Digital. Sorry we rambled a little bit. The topic was very open-ended, and you know, sometimes just that's what happens when you're live. If you have any questions on the topic, or you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, feel free to reach out to us and leave a comment on the video on YouTube, Podbean, or on Twitter with the hashtag DiscDigital.
You can also reach out on our Discord channel as well as our Facebook page, where we talk about the things you love and we share mostly all of our gaming experiences.
Yeah, feel free to stop on by. And from all of us here at Disc Digital, I'm Brett Clark.
And I'm Matt Keaton, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
See you.